and then all of a sudden like mess up. Golly, I'm not good on camera. Like even a little. What is up, Mosaic students? My name is Jessica.
And I'm Gabby.
And we're both student leaders here at Mosaic Students. This week, we are jumping into week 3 of our sermon series called The Thief of Everything. And I'm just going to tell you, like, you're not going to want to miss this week.
We've been talking about how comparison can steal the power of our testimonies. The second week is going to be about how it quenches the gifts that we have inside of us. And the final week is going to be about how comparison can steal our time, which is a really big thing. And we're going to be reading James 1:26 through 27. It says, "If you claim to be religious but don't control your tongue, you are fooling yourself, and your religion is worthless. Pure and genuine religion in the sight of God, the Father, means caring for orphans and widows in their distress and refusing to let the world corrupt you." That's really good. But Jessica, to be honest, I'm sure most people are wondering how this compares to our message. So can you elaborate a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing we have to remember when we are reading anything in Scripture is context matters. Context is everything. So one, who wrote it? Well, James wrote it. We see that from the opening sentence that James wrote it. But what a lot of people don't realize is James was actually Jesus's half-brother. So he grew up with Jesus. He saw him face to face. He interacted with him on a daily basis throughout his entire life. But something interesting is James didn't actually believe Jesus was who he said he was. He actually completely discredited throughout his entire ministry who Jesus was. No, he goes around and he completely mocks Jesus in his entire ministry. In fact, we don't even see him believing that Jesus is who he says he is until after the resurrection, when Jesus comes in and reveals himself to the apostles and the teachers and the disciples and his brothers, it says. And when he reveals himself to James, who has been discrediting Jesus his entire life, saying, "You're not who you say you are," mocking him, it's not until that moment that he's like, "Oh my gosh, I've gotten it wrong. Like, you really are who you say you are."
Yeah, that's really good. I can imagine if James would have done it all again, that he'd do it so differently. Like, I know if I would have realized that Jesus was my half-brother, I would, like, just never let him, like, rest at all. I'd just be talking to him all the time. I'm sure he'd want to know, like, about life, eternity, what Jesus's future plans were. And it was very likely that James was a religious person. And I think that's the heart behind verse 26, his conviction as he writes, "If anyone among you thinks he's religious and this one's religion is useless." He probably attended church every week and memorized Torah and scriptures and did all the religious things. But James wants us to see that what we're doing is useless if we don't realize that Jesus is, like, right in front of us.
Yeah, and that's just absolutely mind-blowing to me. I mean, you flip to something like John chapter 7, verses 3 through 5. It tells this actual story. Jesus has just fed 5,000 people. He has walked on water. He's done all of these miracles. And then he goes into this section where he's, like, preaching, and there are several people that just don't really like what Jesus has to say, and they leave him. And then it says that certain apostles and disciples, followers of Jesus, along with his brothers, come to Jesus and completely just mock him almost. It's almost like James is trying to trap him and to bait him. And it actually says, "For no one works in secret, for no one works in secret if he seeks to be known openly. If you do these things, show yourself to the world." And on surface, you're like, man, James, like, this is James speaking, the brother of Jesus, and you're like, hey, this is really awesome. Like, James is like, hey, go tell the world. But then it's followed up with, for not even his brothers believed him, and then you realize the sarcasm that is coming through what James is actually saying. He's saying, hey, if you really are who you say you are, go and tell everybody else, because I don't care and I don't believe you. And it's just mind-blowing to think that James, like we said earlier, he grew up with Jesus. He's under the same roof. He's in the same house. He's being raised by the same parents. He's learning the same things. And he is so close to Jesus. He is so in proximity close to Jesus. And it just completely goes to the wayside. He just doesn't believe it. And that just really, that's a harsh reality to live in, to know that we can be so close and still just not believe. And it's just crazy to think that he can be even in that situation, to be so close and just not believe.
Yeah. He felt like he wasted so much opportunity and time not having faith in Jesus. Mm-hmm. And this letter is only a little over 100 verses, and over 50 of them are imperative statements. Why? Because James doesn't want any of us to waste a single second trying to merely be religious, but he wants us to have an actual, genuine relationship with Jesus. And because they were brothers, we can imagine how James must have constantly compared himself to Jesus. Like, James lied, cheated, sinned, and Jesus never did. Can you imagine the resentment he felt towards Jesus? Comparison is likely what blinded James to the reality that his half-brother was the Messiah that he had been studying. I want to encourage you tonight to lay down comparison and celebrate others. Comparison will steal your time, and time is way too valuable to be wasted. Celebration will fill your time with love, joy, and peace. And there's something I wanted to add, is that time, it says that time is super valuable, and we are not getting any more time, which I thought is really, really good.
Yeah, and just to close out this series, it's this whole series is talking about comparison, and I know the first couple of weeks we're talking about comparing ourselves to others and diminishing our own gifts. And for those first 2 weeks, it's that person's testimony is better than mine, or that person's giftings and abilities are better than mine, and I'm just not good enough. And really this week, we really want to focus on the fact that sometimes we can also look at somebody else that's doing a little better and compare that and take that in for ourselves and go, I'm just as good as that person, and I'm better than that person almost, and that's when that pride and that arrogance comes in, and that is not going to give us any more time. That's wasted time, because we're arguing. Really, at the end of the day, as believers, if you have your faith and trust and hope in Jesus Christ, we're all on the same team, and we all can use our giftings and our abilities to go forward with the gospel. And when we're sitting here comparing ourselves to one another, we're just taking away from the kingdom impact that we could have. So, but as a testimony to James, he didn't believe for his entire life, and still God's grace and redemption came in and said, I will still give value to your life, and you will still have kingdom impact. So let's put aside all of our comparison and just move forward with the kingdom gospel message to be able to share the hope of Jesus Christ with the rest of the world. If you haven't already, go and subscribe, follow, click Twitter, tweet, whatever. Just go in and follow this channel, share this with your friends and all of that. Let's get the word out. So,
awesome.
How'd we do? Were we better than the boys?
It was okay.
Yeah, I feel
It was okay. You were definitely longer than the boys, which is a big win. Y'all took about 30 seconds longer than Calvin and
I'll take it.
Ryan. No, y'all killed it. That was really good.